Welcome back to the show. Today I have a very special guest with me. I always start guest episodes by saying I have a very special guest, but today I will be interviewing my husband, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, David, the very first question that I have for you is one that I probably know the answer to, but you always surprise me with how you answer questions. So I want to know, what is it that you do? How would you describe what you do in business?
Well, we work in a small family company, and we make wire baskets, is the short answer.
Tell me the long answer, because David is one of the best storytellers that I've ever heard. So tell me the long answer. How do you come to be?
Yeah, well, we got into wire basket making sort of by accident many years ago. We had just moved to an acreage, and it was on top of a hill. It was very bald, and we wanted to make a shelter belt, and we were trying to get some people in to put trees in for us around the homestead. And finally the guy showed up, and his machine broke down, and we had to try to get him to stay. So we fixed it on site because we had such a hard time getting him there. And then he was like, hey, you guys are pretty handy. You want to get into the tree spade making business? And then we kind of got into that. And then we found out, hey, there's wire baskets that kind of go along with this. And we started doing that too. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we fell into it. It was kind of a fluke.
That is so interesting. And I think that that's the case for a lot of business owners. They have this idea, or they're forced into doing something, and it ends up being a business. They end up needing to learn the skill sets to stay in business, which I'm always so impressed and so inspired by how you have stayed in business through all the ups and downs, all these absolutely crazy seasons of life. I think that we could probably talk for years and years, which we have since we've been married for 7 years. But we could probably talk for years about all the stories. So I have picked out just a couple for David to tell in today's episode. And the first one that I have for you is if you can tell me more about your background. I know that you were a cross-country skier, part of Team Canada, and I know that it seems very unrelated to business, but I would love to know, how do you feel like it actually has helped you as a business owner today?
So I used to race as a biathlete many years ago. And I actually started in cross country. The very first time I ever did it was on my 16th birthday. And we thought, hey, let's give this a try. Let's go have some fun. And I was really bad at it. And the only reason why I actually got into biathlon to start with was because I needed credits to pass high school. Mm-hmm. And phys ed credits. Mm-hmm. And I had thought biathlon was downhill skiing and shooting. And
that sounds so much more fun.
So much more fun. And I remember showing up for the very first day of practice, had my helmet on, had my big ski goggles on, big baggy pants, big jacket. And I walk in and I'm like, okay, where's my skis? And they hand me these little toothpicks for skis. And I'm like, oh no, this is for going uphill? No, I want the big ones for going downhill. I'm pretty sure that's what I signed up for. And yeah, so that is how we got into it. It was very much, again, by accident. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, like Ina was saying, we get into things not knowing the full story of what it's going to entail, like how much work it's going to be, all the struggle there's going to be, all the blessings it is. We get into things a lot, sometimes by accident, sometimes it is intentional, but not knowing the full bill of goods getting into it, and it's actually a blessing, because how many of you successful people out there would have done what you have done if you knew the hardships that waited for you ahead of where you were?
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's very tough to do things, and you it snowballs. and you kind of be like, okay, I'll put this much in. And you're like, oh, there's more to this. And then you add more to that snowball and it gets bigger and bigger and gradually hit that critical mass where, you're rolling downhill and you gain mass and you gain momentum and it does it itself. Mm-hmm. And that's success. But the pushing and the forming and everything going into that is the extremely difficult part. And very few of us, I think, would get into a project like this if we knew the whole story behind it.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's how we got into the sport. My very first year of racing was very difficult. The category I was in was junior men. And the people I was racing it had already been to youth worlds and had won championships at youth worlds. Wow. So they went to Europe and they raced and did extremely well. And the very first year that I raced, I was racing against these people. And you would do a 10K sprint. You should do it in 25-ish minutes. Mm-hmm. And so they did that in that 25-ish minutes thing. And when I still can't remember exactly what it was my very first year that I did it because it was really bad. But when I came in, they were already packing up the range, tearing down the lights and everything. And it's like, oh, David still has one more lap to do. Like they had to put another mat out for me to shoot. That I was so late. I still had one more lap left to do. It was so late in the day. Mm-hmm. They completely forgot that I was racing. I finished, but yeah, it was very late in the day when I came in for my last round of shooting. So that was my first year, and it was very discouraging. Mm-hmm.
But you stuck through it.
Yes, and now my younger brother was also in it with me.
Yeah.
And so we did this together. His second year of racing, he qualified to go to nationals. And then he medaled in nationals. In the meantime, I was very much not having fun. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think I really did not like the sport for 7 years. I was in it for 8, and I didn't like it for 7.
It took 7 years for you to actually start liking it.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed aspects of it, but I really did not like race day.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what you do, right? Is race day. Yeah,
that's kind of the whole point.
That's the whole point. Race day is the whole point. So every time race day would hit through that entire time, it was, that knot in your stomach, butterflies, really not enjoying what the pain was going to be.
Yeah.
And knowing in my mind that, hey, I'm still so far behind, no matter, I'm going to go through this pain because I'm going to go through this pain. But at the end of the day, after I've gone through the pain, the result that is going to show up on the scoreboard is going to be very unflattering. And it's just you compete and you compete and you compete and you still feel very almost ashamed to go out there and race with these very high caliber people. Yeah.
I get that so much. And my brain is just on fire with all these analogies from that story because business owners, like at least online business owners, you're listening to this and you probably have a launch of some sort in your future if you're someone who's taking enough action. And that is basically your race day. If you get to that race day feeling unprepared, you kind of just have to follow through with it anyways. And that brings me to the question that's constantly in my mind, I'm sure in everyone else's minds. Why did you continue? Like if it was so hard, it was such torture, what brought you through?
So Mom was very encouraging. She was helping me set goals. And the long-term goal was for me to go to University Worlds. And I set that goal when I got accepted into college. And so by this point, I had been in the sport for about 2.5 years.
Okay, so around 18.
Yeah. So I got my credits. I was good. I'm like, okay, I'm in college now. Hey, this would be kind of fun to do to go and compete in Europe. And maybe I can make it there. And this is when when I was setting the goal, a lot of times you set a goal when you're getting into something and you're like, okay, here's the goal I set. And then you start getting into the details of the goal that you just set. And then you're like, oh, wow, this is a very big goal.
The river of misery.
Yes. and the realization of, oh, wow. You know, I thought, okay, I'm not going to the Olympics. I'm going to University Worlds. So I thought I've dumbed it down enough where it was manageable, but this is freaking hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You didn't know what you got yourself into.
No, right? Yeah. So anyway, that was the goal. And Mom was extremely encouraging. So the goal setting was extremely important. I mean, if you're not in it for any reason, I would have quit probably right away.
Yeah. Like that first day when they had to do the
but I needed credits to pass high school. So that's kept me in it for the 2 years.
Yeah. That was kind of like the motivator.
That was a mini goal.
Yeah.
Right. I need something to pass high school. And then it was like, hey, maybe I can go a little bit farther and do this.
Yeah. But once again, if you had known how long it would take you to actually get to University Worlds and that it would take 7 years to actually enjoy it, that is the other reason why you probably would have quit so much sooner.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can see how the lessons you learned there are still applicable in your life. That basically developed your brain to be resilient in 2024, the absolutely crazy year we had, and all the years before that.
Yeah.
It's like a repeating pattern.
Yeah. We kind of go through difficult times in our lives, in personal lives, business, spiritual, you name it. We get into things that are difficult to get through. Yeah. And our go-to mechanism is not wanting to go through it. Yeah. We want to go around it. We want to go under it, whatever. We don't want to go through it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And the number one thing I think I learned while I was in the sport was accepting the pain. Because when you're racing, you feel like your lungs are just going to explode. You're in a lot of physical pain, and you're in a lot of mental, like the mental toughness you have to be racing and to then switch disciplines that go from skiing to shooting, and then from shooting to skiing, and then playing the field before you get on there with the psychology of the psychological warfare that you enact on your competitors as
Which
well.
Which you're very good at. There's lots of stories there too.
So all these things kind of go into racing. And so all these things that we go through our lives, it's very applicable. You know, hey, there's the prep. Yeah. There's getting your mental state correct for whatever you're doing. If you look at it as a race, great, or a performance. And then there's the actual performance. Sometimes it could just be a lot of hurting in order to get through it. It depends on whatever discipline you're doing. It could be the balance of where you are could be way more focused on mental toughness. Yeah. And then your prep would be the hurting phase, but doesn't matter. It's all in there. There's the hurting phase. There's the mental phase. It's all there. It doesn't matter where it is. For me, it was, yes, we did the training, but the real hurt came during race day. Yeah. That's the real, because you don't train as if you train a little bit under for race day because you don't want to peak before race day.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the real hurt came on race day, but you have to have that consistency, right? Leading up to it. Like if you miss or blow a day of training, that affects your race day, right? Because then you won't peak properly. Yeah. So, yeah.
That makes so much sense. And it's making me think about the book, Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. He talks about how there are 2 journeys that we go through that we need to lead our customers through. The journey that your offer will give you, and then also the journey of who they become. And what I'm hearing you say is that you went through the journey of becoming a biathlete. You had these mini goals. You had the goal of getting the high school credits, getting to University Worlds, but then you also became someone different during that process. Yeah. Like you had to feel the pain. You had to go through it. Yeah. You had to stop fighting that you had to go through it in order to get to the end?
I remember one race. We got to be invited as an Alberta team to go race in France in their nationals. So we got to go to Europe. It was a small goal, and they took me along as a sure, why not? David can come along. And I was stoked. I'm like, great. And so when we get to Europe, biathlon is the number one televised sport in Europe.
Oh, interesting.
And so in Canada, North America, biathlon is like, oh, what do you do again? Is that like swimming? And they think it has something to do with the summer. And
or
it's
like
totally not.
running and biking.
Running or swimming or whatever.
That's what I
right?
thought before I met you.
Yeah. And it's, so when we get there, when we go practice, people would come from the village and be like fans and watch us, and we were like superstars. And so it was really cool. And like we'd go for a run or whatever, people would get out of our way. We were like rock stars. It was very fun. So anyways, the race day came, and I got out there, started going, same thing, butterflies, all this kind of, hey, I really don't want to put this effort in and then show up poorly.
Yeah.
Now, in Canada, I wasn't great, but this is a couple of years into it, and I wasn't as bad as I had been.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm used to coming in where I am coming in Canada. I know where that is, and I can deal with that level of, humiliation. Okay. I was okay with that. When we got to Europe, these races were more serious. Yeah. Because they had more funding, and they were, way more serious about their racing there. It was a bigger deal. It was like hockey for them.
Yeah.
Right. So they've made it to nationals, and this is a big deal for them. So when I went to go race, I quickly found out that I was going to make a very bad showing. Anyways, I was trying hard, but I started talking very negatively to myself in this particular race and being like, hey, oh man, I'm just not making it. I can't do this. I'm starting to feel a little sick. You know what? I am sick. I think I'm going to throw up. You know what? It'd be good for me to stop. So I did. I quit. I quit the race. That is the only race that I quit.
Interesting.
And it is the one race that's kind of like, hey, I will never quit again. Because after I quit, and I saw the results, they have a DNF, did not finish. Oh. Right? So you're still at the very bottom. I was going to come in the bottom, but I'd have at least a timestamp at the bottom. Yeah. But this one, it was like, did not finish. And it was such a condemnation. I was the only one that did not finish. DNF. And I was like, I am not going to be a DNF ever again. I don't care if the gap in my numbers is so big. A big gap is better than a DNF. Yeah. So that was seared into my memory. And I've done other races that were harder. There's this one race. It was just a purely cross country race. It was in a discipline that I was not a specialty at. Like my specialty cross country is skate skiing. Yeah. But I did this race, and it was at a distance that I wasn't a specialty at.
Was it classic?
It was classic, and it was a different distance, and it's called the Berkey. Okay. There's lots of different Berkeys around the world. If you're a cross country fan, sorry.
Assuming we all know what a Berkey is.
Yeah. It's actually a cool story, but I won't go into it. So I did this, and it was I think the true distance is supposed to be 55, and I did a dumbed down version of a Berkey, which was 35 kilometers.
It's still very far.
And so I was doing this race, and things were going great. I was feeling good, yada, yada, yada. Had some nice new poles, loving them. Nice new skis. Felt good, felt energized. It was a fun race. It didn't mean anything. Like it didn't affect me at all because it was in a discipline I wasn't a specialty at. Distance I wasn't a specialty at. It was just for fun, just for training, no pressure, and I was having fun. And then probably 5 kilometers into the race, so this is very early on in the race, I broke a pole.
Oh, I know the story.
Yeah, and so I broke this pole, and there's like 30 kilometers left to do.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, oh, immediately I was like, okay, should I quit? Because I have an equipment failure. It's not
You
on
kind of have an
me. I have,
excuse.
yes. And, it was really cold out too. It was
Yeah.
minus 20. And then with the wind chill, it was like minus 25. You shouldn't be racing at that level. They usually shut it down, but everyone came a long way. So we did it anyways. I had duct tape on my cheeks to keep the wind burn off.
That is cold.
It's very cold. So I'm like, oh, I could quit right now and get out of this cold. I'm like, no, I'm going to just do it. And so I did it with one pole. And in doing classic technique with one pole, that is very hard because you lose all the advantage of your side skate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it was very difficult. So I did the last 30 kilometers with one arm. And it's one of my favorite races to remember.
Why is that?
The feeling of finishing
Yeah.
under hard circumstances.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good showing compared to my other teammates because they did very well.
Yeah. With two poles.
With two poles. I mean, but I wasn't too far behind them, even with missing the one pole. I mean, obviously there was the gap.
Yeah.
This was a little bit later on in my career, but the thought of DNF was too much.
Yeah.
So I kept on going.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible. And I have heard that story probably about 6 or 7 different times. But every time you tell it, I notice the moment when you say, I decided not to quit. Like there's almost this glimmer of resilience, like this is who I am. I am not a quitter. And when I was very early on in entrepreneurship, and you were my number one coach and cheerleader, as you still are, I remember you reminded me of a quote that I would say often, but I'd forgotten about it in that moment. You told me, quitters never win and winners never quit. And what defines someone who is a winner instead of a quitter is simply the fact of not quitting. And that is how you can approach a business as well. If you follow through, you keep going no matter what, you will win. You will see results. And if those results are simply an indicator of what not to do, then fantastic, you've won. Or if it's an indicator of how to pivot, what's your next move, then that is also a win. So tell me more about last year, about 2024, about the move. We experienced, I think, 11 miracles moving to this new place. David had to completely take down the shop, all of those machines that make those baskets, move them 3 hours north, all with a crushed toe, in a blizzard, just absolutely incredible circumstances. So we don't have the time to go into all 11 miracles, so we won't go there. But I'd love for you to just tell the story of like, what is the number one thing you remember about needing to push through, about needing to be resilient, and like that positive expectancy that was necessary.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have an option to quit.
So when I tell this story, a lot of people are like, well, why didn't you give yourself more time? And it
was like a week.
Yeah. So
a week to move this entire company.
We had to move in spring because that's when we sold our place. And we also had a deadline to be out of our place by the end of April because the power company wasn't terribly thrilled with us.
Yeah, they were threatening to kick us out, which isn't the greatest thing in the world.
So they gave us 2 years, and then the end of that 2 years was April. And we either had to fix the problem or be gone. And so we chose to be gone, and they had to give us a week extension as it was because we sold. So we're like, okay, fine, you sold, you're fine. So we were, pushing hard, trying to get everyone's product out the door before we moved. And when we approached our guys, we're like, hey guys, we need to do this. And they're like, okay, great. And we're like, hey, we'd like to have you guys come with us, move to a different place. And they're like, hey, great. About 2 weeks before we had to move, like the numbers were probably about a month before we had to move. The numbers that were coming out of the shop were like not good. Production was very low, and I was getting very worried that we weren't going to have some of our customers' product to them. And also I was starting to get very nervous about the move because I've never moved in my life.
Yeah. You had been on that property for your entire life.
Yeah. And I was looking, look out in the yard, and there's so much in the field and the pasture and all this stuff that had to be picked up and moved because the other people didn't want it there. And it's like,
they were making life so difficult.
Yeah, that too. And we just didn't have enough manpower. And so we tried to put more manpower. We started running 24/7. That didn't really help much. It just made things worse. Finally, we were able to get everybody's product out the door 3 days before we had to move. So that means we were building baskets 3 days before we had to be out. That means we could not tear down the shop because we needed all the machines. We couldn't tear nothing. Nothing could be torn down. And we still had a bunch of stuff in the yard that we needed to run operations. So 3 days before we had to move, we finally started doing the teardown. So William and I...
that's his brother, by the way.
Yeah, so William and I started working... I think we maybe slept combined for those 3 days, maybe 6 hours.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And we worked around the clock to get this done. And called in some cousins, called in favors, started praying. It was truly unfun. About, I think, maybe a month or two before this move, I had dropped a hunk of steel on my toe.
Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks before.
And we were trying to clean up the yard, getting it all things, and there's lost metal that needed to go in the scrap bin. Dropped that on my toe. Lost the nail. Incredible pain. Oh, that was very not fun.
Talk about not quitting.
And I couldn't wear anything, so I wore sandals.
Yes, and in Canada, it still snows up till middle of May. So we're talking middle of April here.
Yeah, so it's snowing.
Yeah.
It's snowing outside still. And it was actually on the day that we had to be out that we were in a blizzard.
Yes.
So we were doing the last moving in the blizzard. And we had rented some machines to help get it out. And I remember being in one of the machines being like, Lord, new owners are going to be here in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
There's like 2 days left of work here to move out. There's like 2 days of work. I can't move all this stuff. There's not enough trucks. We had 7 semis come into the yard. 7 semis worth of stuff just for the shop.
Yeah.
To move. That's 53 feet of deck. And I still didn't have enough truck space. Granted, I wasn't being super duper careful with space because I just had to load fast and be fast.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, God, I cannot do this. What am I going to do to get out of here? They're going to be here in 4 hours, and I have all this shit in the yard still. What is going to happen? And I just remember praying and praying and praying and praying. What's going to happen? And then I just felt like this break. And I just felt like God say, it's done. It's finished. And I'm like, great. I'm still here. You've said it's done, but I'm still here. Where is it done? Where is this thing done at? How is this done?
Yeah.
And God's like, don't stress about it. Take all the stuff and stick it outside the front gate. And I'm like, oh, good idea. I'll just grab all this stuff and stick it outside the front gate. So I grabbed all of the stuff that I could have. In the meantime, they came roaring through the gate 30 minutes early. Massively pissed off. Just not happy. And I'm trying to apologize while I'm working, trying to get out of his way. And finally get everything out of the yard. And I start gradually taking it down to our neighbors who graciously said, hey, you can use our area if you like for staging down the road if you need to, which was very nice. It took me the rest of the day to move the rest of our stuff down to our neighbors. But we were able to get out of there with only about, an hour of being in his way. And he showed up half hour early. So, so that was one of the big miracles. There was a whole bunch of little miracles that happened during the move that was amazing. And we won't go into that. And then my brother on the last day, he was already moved up here. So I was doing the last finishing loading on the last day. And William was up here, and my mom was actually with me, helping me with the last little bit of the move down there. And William was placing the big machines that had moved the day before
in the new shop.
And the one truck that had all of the expensive stuff on it went off the road into the ditch.
Yeah.
And it was a miracle that all the equipment stayed on. And so they were able to bring in stuff, because this is, again, it's a blizzard, that they're moving in a blizzard. We're moving in a blizzard. Everything was very difficult to move in. The roads are bad. And it's definitely not the time to be moving expensive equipment around.
Yeah.
But we were able to get it in. And the thought that came through to us very loud and clear was through.
The word through.
Yeah. That's actually part of our family crest.
Yes, the Hamilton name.
The Hamilton name. It's right on it is the word through. And it's kind of been a mantra. And so what we're looking at is like, sometimes God's not going to spare you from difficult situations. And a lot of times he's not going to.
Most of the time.
Yeah. But he says that he will be with us through it.
Yeah.
And William actually had this one thought. He was talking about, hey, think of a kid who has a rich dad, very influential, very powerful. Immediately, we all think of a kid who's pretty spoiled.
Yeah.
Like he says, Dad, I want this, and he gets it, or whatever, right? Very spoiled. Now think of a dad who's maybe not so influential, not so rich, but very engaged with his family, and working on the tractor. And you come in and you're like, "Hey, Dad, I got a problem. What do you think of this?" And he takes the time. "Hey, son, what's going on? How can I help you?" And he just takes his time with you, and he's there, and he's soundboarding. He doesn't have any influence in the situation or anything like that, but he's like, "Hey, here's my advice, yada, yada, yada." And you feel so much better prepared.
Yeah.
Now, take that thought of this very powerful dad, very rich, very influential, and marry that to that dad who is very engaged, very caring, very loving, and that's who you have in God.
Yeah.
He has so much to give you. He has all the advantages of the first and all the advantages of the second and more. And we don't have to be stressed out to the nines about where our next meal is going to come from, how we're going to provide, how we're going to do this. All we have to do is go to God and say, "God, how?" Not why, but how. And the reason the questions, the asking the right question is very important. So Job was a very righteous man, and he was a great guy. And God was like, "Hey, he's a great guy." And then a whole bunch of things bad happened to him. And Job's like, "Why did this happen to me?"
Yeah.
And up until this point, nothing that Job did, like Job was great throughout the entire problem. And then he's sitting down in the sand, with his friends, and he's like, "Woe is me. Why did this happen?" This is the only time that God actually started, getting a little bit upset. And God never answered him why it happened. Like if you read through,
that's true.
Yeah, God never answered him. He's like, "I'm God. You don't get to ask why.
Yeah.
I'm God. You're not. You don't get to ask why. You can ask how.
Yeah.
How do you want me to go through this? How do I do this well?" And he lost his kids, he lost all of his wealth, and he lost his health. All the things that we can, like the stuff of nightmares, is what he lost. The only thing he didn't lose is his wife, who said, "Curse God and die." So, that wasn't so helpful.
The hardest thing for him to go through.
Yeah.
But he had to.
He had to. And the question to ask is how, for a couple reasons. When you ask why, it's the heels in ground, pulling back, I'm not going through this mentality. If you ask how, it's like, okay, you've now surrendered, being, okay, I can see that I'm going to be going through this.
Yeah.
How do you want me to go through this? It's an engagement in your own problem.
Yeah.
It's not thinking, hey, I'm too good for this. I shouldn't be having to deal with this. This is okay. All right. We all have problems. We all have stuff that needs to get done. I guess I'm going to go through this. I guess I got to do this. So how would you like me to go through this? Which is very good. So a lot of times we might get to the point, all right, fine, we'll do this, but I'm going to do it my way. The best way to get through something is ask, how do you want me to go through it?
Yeah.
That is probably the biggest piece of advice I could probably tell anyone, anywhere, is what question are you asking? You're asking what, or are you asking how? And this is not, I can't take credit for this. This was a sermon from Joyce Myers.
Okay.
Highly recommend her.
Yeah, she's really good.
And really spoke to us and
That's
in our
beautiful.
situation.
And that almost brings it to full circle. I never go into interviews with anyone thinking about a specific topic that I want the episode to be about. And what this one has happened to be about is going through difficult situations in life, in business, without quitting. And what I realize and what you just taught me is that it comes down to asking the right question. If you are asking, why do I have to do this? You have not accepted yet that you have to go through. You're still looking for the workaround, the can I maybe take a shortcut? Can I maybe go around this river of misery? But you have to go through to get to the other side. And what I always tell a lot of my clients is, if you go through the valley, that's where the growth is. Because in the valley, that is where the fruit grows. And if you go through, then who you become is the most important thing. So I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing those stories, those insights. I hope you all can see why David has been my #1 business consultant and coach for my 7 years of entrepreneurship. And I'm just so grateful.
Thank you
so
for having
grateful
me.
for you. Normally I would ask you, how can people find you? But my husband David is a non-social media type of person. So if you have follow-up questions for him or want to explore more topics, just send me a DM on Instagram. I would be so happy to pass on any questions to him. And we could even do another episode.
Cool beans.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.